Shalom, shalom. Welcome once again to our midweek MIDrash. Welcome to our study. And we've been engaged
Yes.
in a deep dive, as it is, Psalm 139, getting to know it better and more detailed, appreciating the aesthetic of the psalm, the aesthetic of the poetry and of the language and of the grammar, and also the spiritual backbone, the ever strong arch or arc, which is the arch of the word that delivers the goods, delivers the truth to us. And so we've been very grateful to have our brother Herman with us, and
Thank you.
we're very grateful for that. And again, Psalm 139. And I would just want to mention this, which I've mentioned every week basically, but especially tonight, since we're going to conclude the third of four paragraphs, if you will. So Psalm 139 has four prophetic, four poetic paragraphs of 6 verses each. Okay, let's show. Why is that going on? Okay, restream. What does that say?
William just signed on. Hello, William. Welcome. And welcome to everybody else that's on and that
William. Shalom, shalom.
will be listening in the future as well.
Man.
Welcome.
So again, each there's 6 verses each in each 4 paragraphs. Okay, which means verses 1 through 6 is 1, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, 19 to 24. So it's very symmetrical, and it's perfect. But with 6 verses of each separate paragraph, it concludes with a couplet that elaborates on each unit's central theme. So tonight, as Herman reads verses 13 to 18, 13 to 16 really are specific details of the content of that section, of the powers of the eternal Yah in the formation of mankind. And it concludes with a couplet. These 2 last verses all form the conclusion, just as Shlomo in the book of Ecclesiastes, the Kohelet, the preacher, he says, this is the conclusion of the matter. To fear Yahuwah, fear the eternal Yah, and keep his commandments. This is the whole purpose of mankind. The purpose of man, while you were put on this earth, is to walk in his truth and to walk as he would walk and walk as Messiah walked. So that's the conclusion. All other things, fall into secondary positions. And we're grateful for the word. And 1 through 6 was all about his knowledge of everything. Okay. And then the 7 to 12 was his presence is everywhere. Okay. His omniscience, his omnipresence. And then we go into the micro verse. He was everywhere throughout the universe. He knows everything, which is all about the universe, and from big to small. But 13 to 18 deals with the micro, deals with the cell division, deals with the creation of mankind, that we see is essential for us to understand, because in the creation account, all the creatures were created according to their kind. Where is mankind? Adam, male and female, he made them. Adam is actually a generic plural term for mankind, as well as being the name of the first male to walk the earth, right? So his work in forming man that was made in the Elohim kind, let's make him in our image and in our likeness and in our ability to rationalize and to be creative and to reflect upon the beauty of things. Talking about music, talking about songs, talking about lyrics, talking about musicians, talking about these things. Whereas we just hear sounds if we're just an animal. We're just hearing sounds, okay. But we can actually break things down and understand and even categorize different types of music, let alone different types of study, different types of thought, sports, contemplating a vacation, booking tickets on an airline, getting room service, okay, on a hotel. These are all things that we take for granted, that mankind is so far above the creatures, and yet that understood, the spirit-filled man, the man who has the Ruach Elohim, is that much far above mankind than mankind is above the animals. And so we need to walk like that, walk with that level of accountability, not pride, but accountability and confidence, as he fills us with his knowledge and his truth, and we are capable of receiving. We are capable of doing it. And that's the thing that been poisoned over the years with teachings that no, we can't do that. It's impossible. No, it's not. He's given us something that we can do if we walk in His truth. We can walk in it. The halakha, the way to walk, will guide us in this. So here we're going to go into this third portion as we conclude the third of four sections in the power of Elohim in creating man, in the intricacies that we are fearfully, and the detail is amazing to the microscopic level, as we talked about that in the last few weeks, the forming of the DNA strand and all these other things. It's all amazing, and that's what provable science is. Provable science is our friend, and also with the spiritual angle of things. There tends to be believers who say, "Oh, science is nonsense, whatever." Not if it's provable, not if it's able to recreate the results in a laboratory or some kind of a testing. In the same way, our spiritual knowledge has to pass the smell test too. We have to not come up with our own little doctrines here and there, but that which is provable. Test all things, prove all things. Just like with science, there's new scientific conclusions that is still being debated back and forth until it proves its merit, and its tested. It goes beyond theory to establish a fact that can be replicated. So we have to be that way in the spirit. We have to walk as Yeshua, the Messiah, walked, and behave as He wants us to behave, and to prove the things that He tells us to do, and have evidence that this is the correct way to go. So it's very challenging. There's no passengers, there's no spectators on this boat. Okay, we're all active explorers. In fact, in the very first verse, search me, in the first word in there, I forget it off the top of my head, which is like exploring, like a mining exposition, as it's used in the book of Job, like mining for truth, mining for it. And that's what we're doing. And we're going through these verses, just as we did with the Isaiah portion, just as we did with Psalm 118, that we need to know the truth, and we want to search to our best ability. We're not claiming to have, the truth all wrapped up. We're still learning. But what we do know, we're going to share. And what we do know, we work out. If there's certain problems or in the language or in the understanding of a certain verse, we're going to work it out. We're going to work it out and humbly submit ourselves to the word, to its teaching, and so on. So that's a long-winded opening. I apologize for that. So we're going to go on, but I want to first invite our brother Gilbert to open in prayer with us before we go any further. All right, Mr. Gill?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Shabbat,
Well, not the Sabbath.
Shalom, everyone. Shalom also, Brother William. Eternal and everlasting Father, creator of the heavens and the earth. We thank you once more in your presence this evening. Thank you for your everlasting mercy that we can come together this evening once more for the continuation of the reading of the Psalms 139, which is a spiritual food for our soul. Yes. May you bless our host and co-host, Brother Bob and Brother Herman, and that you may continue to guide both of them as they expound upon the spiritual word from Psalm 139. These and other blessings I ask in the mighty name of your Son, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Father. Okay, so at this time I'm going to turn it over to Herman, who's going to give us a little bit of a recap, and then read in, I believe, the New King James Version or whatever version. He's going to read that section of 13 to 18, right?
Well, hey, Bob, if you don't mind, I'd like to read the stanza first and then do the recap of the main points of last week. Alrighty, so let me go to the text. I'm going to be reading from the New King James Version, starting in verse 13, and it says, "For you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, as when as yet there was none of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, there would be more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Right, so we covered verse 16 last week, which has to do with the your I saw my substance being unformed, and in your book they were all written. And I said last week that the book, before you can write something down in the book, it has to be in the mind. So I hope to do a little review on that, and then of course the last two verses of the stanza, 17 and 18, is what Bob will be teaching on. So let me go here. Bob, is there anything you'd like to share before I go to what I am going to review?
No, I think we're pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
All righty.
Nice.
Okay, so here we go. I said last week that there were two elements in verse 16 that challenged me personally, and that had to do with the kulam, as well as the kativ and the kareh. And the challenging part about it was that I was trying to figure out if the kulam referred to golmi, to my substance, to my unformed substance, or if it referred to yamim, to days. And it was a challenge because kulam is a masculine plural term, whereas golmi is singular. But yamim is masculine plural as well. So that was one of the challenges. And I concluded that it could be referring to both, because earlier in the stanza, based on the context, earlier in the stanza, the poet speaks about his kidneys, his inward parts, and his bones, and so on. So I saw golmi as a collective noun. Okay, a collective noun. So that was one of the challenges. So I think it's a hinge, as you said, Bob. I like the way you described it. You said that it's like a hinge connecting to the first stanza as well as the third one. And then the other challenge was the kativ and the kareh, the kativ being below, which is translated in the New King James, when as yet there was none of them, below meaning and none, or and no, and not, or but not, depending on the context. Whereas the kareh was velo, which sounds the same, but it's a totally different meaning, and for him, for him. It can also be and for it, it being masculine singular, but in this case for him. So this was a challenge. Why such a difference? Because it is quite a difference. So I lean, of course, more towards the kativ, which is and none. However, when I did a little research and I came across the 11Q Psalm A in the Dead Sea Scrolls for this particular psalm, Psalm 139, to my surprise, in the text of the Dead Sea Scroll, it had what the rabbis say should be read. I found that very interesting. So that was just a few of the things that I shared last week. I also stated that regarding your book, that everything was written in the book. In reality, it's the Lord's mind. Because even when I am studying and I'm writing something down, I have to have that thought in my mind first. I have to formulate a thought in my mind before I can put it on paper. And this is why, although poetically it says in your book everything was written, I believe that it's really referring to the infinite mind of the Lord. Everything begins in his mind. The blueprint, the design for humanity begins in the Lord's mind. And then, of course, in the process of time, there is this person called David who becomes a living reality. All of his characteristics, as well as the days that were allotted for him, became a reality in time and space. And although the verse speaks about that everything was allotted to him, that these things were allotted to him, I stated that the verse is not teaching predestination. It does not teach predestination. It just speaks of his creation, how he was formed, and how the days were formed for him. Also in verse 16, I spoke about these cantillation marks, and of course there are many of them. I'm going to focus on this, the Galgal and the Athnak. And the reason why I focus on this one is because they look very similar. They look very similar here. But the Galgal is a conjunctive accent. Okay, so it unites. It's a conjunctive accent. And of course, it also stresses which syllable is to be stressed. So it's kulam, not kulam, but kulam. That's the syllable that is to be stressed, and it functions as a conjunctive accent. Whereas the Athnak also stresses the syllable, but it's a major disjunctive accent. Alrighty, and this then, as a major disjunctive accent, it ends a thought or a clause in the poetry. And here is our verse for today, Bob. So we're going to tackle verse 17 and verse 18. And I'll go back to 17. And by the way, there are a few peculiarities in this verse, which I hope to share when we get to the grammar. A few peculiarities like ma. Why is it ma and me? And so I'm going to touch on that later on, Lord willing. Okay, Bob, you're on.
Okay, so we go to verse 17, and we see it right up there. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O Elohim. How great are the sum of them. So let's see how accurate that is, because that's the other thing we're doing. The translators don't always have everything in complete control. As Herman's going to share later, there's certain colloquialisms, for lack of a better description, certain phrases and certain sayings that require a little understanding of what they meant in the day and what they mean to us now. So here we go. Vali, and to me, ma yakru, and to me, how precious are they? Okay, what are what? Re acha el, and how precious to me are the thoughts of you, el. So as you can tell by it's a dialogue that David is speaking to you. Are the thoughts of you? Are your thoughts el? Okay, now going back to how, ma, and then they're joined together by the makef.
Correct. Here's the makef here.
Yeah,
there's the makef there.
Okay, and to me, how precious, and the word precious is yakar, and then the u is our, or they are. Okay, and the root of that word is to be heavy, valuable, prized, and the idea of heavy, that which is precious, brings to mind the unjust measures which the Eternal hates. He hates unjust measures, which again has various weights. There's an old expression: somebody puts their thumb on the scale, means that you're going to get an inaccurate result,
yes.
And it's going to come to my favor, not to yours, and you're going to pay more and not less. And again, the idea of heaviness, the thoughts of Yah being heavy. It's like, the old hippy dippy expression, heavy man. That is really totally heavy.
That's heavy.
The heaviness is interesting too, because the word that we get for glory, the kavod, also which is translated as glory, also refers to a heaviness, and we are to be heavy, and not in the physical sense, which is what I'm struggling with. But it implies that we're not a lightweight. To be a lightweight means you're, whatever you say is taken with a grain of salt, because it's not how's that for a colloquialism? That's a little saying, right? Grain of salt. But in other words, you're not really up to par. You're speaking as a child, like the way the author of Hebrews talks about the believers. Some of the believers he's writing to us, saying you should be teachers now, but you're still drinking milk. You haven't even been weaned yet, let alone how can you prepare meat for others when you are still on the bottle, so to speak. Okay, so again, the idea of the heaviness, the glory that he shares with none. But we are to be people of weight, just like Mashiach HaShovet, Messiah the Judge. What is he described as being? He's got the winnowing fork in his hand, and he throws up the stack because the wheat and the chaff are all kind of bunched together, and he sticks the fork in there and throws it up, and the kernels have weight to them, and they come and they're gathered, but meanwhile the chaff is so light. If the wind can blow it away, and it kind of floats its way down, and it's easily gathered and put aside because they've already disqualified themselves by their capacity to bear any value, any nutrition. They're chaff. It's chaff. It burns. It's disintegrating very easily, but it's gathered up and it's put into the oven to be burned as fuel for that which to prepare for the stoves. So kavod is a heaviness, and we are to be heavy, to be considered. To consider something means a matter that's the heavy matter is to consider. You think about it, as opposed to just a knee-jerk reaction, which immature people often do, instead of considering the ramifications, considering, where this decision is going. So we are to be heavy, but not just us. How precious, how rare, and how wonderful are your thoughts. Your thoughts, and the word for the thoughts is ye, re'ah, and it's also the thoughts. Also, that word also refers to being an associate or a companion of ideas of the mind, and the thoughts of Yah become our companion. They become an associate to us because we compile them. We learn from them. The student has to adapt the teachings. The teachings are an abstract, but they're presented. And now I know this. If you have wisdom to share, you share that. That's where validity to your experience comes into being, right? If you keep it to yourself, who knows what you're thinking? But you talk about something that is true, and somebody hears it and they say, wow, okay. Now you're both associates as well as the truth itself, and you're identified by that truth. As Herman does a teaching about whatever, you can identify that with Herman. You can identify with the source, and of course, the greater source comes from beyond Herman as well. But we can be associates. We can be companions to the ideas of the mind of Yah. Companions to the mind of Yah. Okay, your thoughts, O El, and there's a lengthy portion I would like to just read in 1 Corinthians with the idea of the thoughts and the wisdom of El. Okay, to me, how precious are they? How precious are they? And we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 7. And Shaul, the Apostle Paul, Rav Shaul, the Shaliach, the apostle, he speaks to a community which is obsessed with tribalism and splits and all these other things instead of focusing on that which unifies. Okay? And he says to them, but we speak the wisdom of Elohim in a mystery. The hidden wisdom which Elohim ordained before the ages for our glory, for our kavod, because we are companions to the glory of the words and the teachings, okay? Which Elohim ordained before the ages for our glory, which none of the rulers of this age know. For had they known, they would have crucified the Adon. They would not have crucified the Adon of glory. Okay? So here we see Shaul speaking very matter-of-factly, but very deeply, because he's talking about the hidden wisdom. It's hidden for those who are not looking for it. Those who don't go looking for something, to them, everything is lost. Everything is a mystery. But just like a child, we learn something new every day, maybe, But when you're an infant, and I'm seeing this with my granddaughter, Madison, every day what she knows is twice or three times what she knew yesterday, twice and three times what she knew on Monday. The growing is exponential. It grows. It's like a funnel. It goes this way. The beginning, just like mankind, begins with Adam and Chava, and it expands to where it is today, where it's like 7 billion people on the earth? Anyway, so the hidden wisdom which Elohim ordained before the ages for our glory, just like when Moshe went up to the mountain and communicated with Yah, heard his voice directly. He comes down from the mountain, he's glowing. He's illuminated, and we should look for that illumination. We might not see it literally, but we have that. When we read something, I know I could speak for myself, and I'm sure I can speak for Herman on this point, is when we discover something, we are illuminated. We are,
oh yeah.
We have the aura, the light, but we are not light. We are kavod. We are heavy. We are weighted down because we are substantial. We are not floating around, but the light bulb goes off, and the aura of Yahuwah, the light of Yahuwah goes off in us, and it illuminates us. But there's no room for boasting, because we boast in the one who's teaching us. The thing that we didn't know 5 minutes ago, now we have, and now we're accountable for it. On top of that, we're accountable for that knowledge, that we share it and pass it on, pay it forward. So let me just go on, because I'm going on too long, I think. Which none of the rules of this age knew, for had they known, they would not have crucified the Adon of glory, of kavod. For it is written, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man things which Elohim has prepared for those who love him. And what does it say in Yochanan, Aleph, chapter 5? Those who know him, love him. And how do we prove our love for him? We keep his commandments. We keep his words. His words are kavod. They weigh us down so that we can go flying off in the breeze. They keep us, that we can be companions with truth. And I really love that Re'ah also implies an associate, a companion. We're companions every Wednesday evening, and we are gaining this heaviness. So eye hasn't seen, nor ear has heard, nor has entered into the heart of man the things which Elohim has prepared for those who love him. There's a key there for those who love him. If you're just bumping into the darkness and groping in the darkness, this will never occur to you. But Elohim has revealed them to us through his Ruach, the Spirit. It's through the Ruach. For the Ruach, the Spirit, searches all things. Yes, the deep things of Elohim. And this is so important that we get this, because this is super heavy. Okay? For what man knows the things of a man except the Ruach of a man that is in him? Now, as Yahuwah, the Elohim, breathed life into us, and when we became a nefesh, we became a living, breathing being, he imparted a Ruach. There's a spirit in man. We see a lot of this in the teachings in the Psalms and in Job. There's a spirit in man. Because the Ruach combines with the brain, the gray matter, to create the mind. So the most evil person, even somebody who drives a car into a crowd of celebrants, he can think. He can rationalize in the poisoned mind. So every man has a Ruach, but the Ruach Elohim needs to come into our mind and to turn us and to be servants of Yah. But let's go back into that. So what does man know except that the spirit of man, which is in him, will teach him? Okay. Even so, no one knows the things of Elohim except the Ruach of Elohim. Okay. So the only way to know the things of Elohim is to know the Ruach of Elohim. Okay. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from Elohim, that we may know the things that have been freely given to us by Elohim. He's sharing his glory, his kavod, his heaviness, his companionship with us by giving us the words of life. Okay, even Kepha says, where are we going to go? You got the words of life. I don't know. Where else can I possibly desire to be? Okay. So listen what it says. Now we have received, not the spirit of the world, the Ruach of the world, the spirit that is in man, which is mortal, which is fallible, which is prone to evil actions as well as good actions. The knowledge of Ra and Tov, evil of good and evil, the full spectrum of comprehension and behavior. Now we have received, but the Ruach who is from Elohim, that we may know the things that have been freely given to us by Elohim. So those people who say, well, I'm only human. Well, if you're only human, that means you're only connected to your Creator if you're faithful and you are of a divine potential. So you can't say we're only human. We can't just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, well, me. No, not at all. And then it goes on to say, let's see. But the Ruach is from Elohim, that we might know the things that have been freely given to us by Elohim. Okay, why would he give us stuff that we can't know or things that we can't do? That would be an evil deity who's whimsical, who enjoys our failings and our fallings. Nobody brings up their child to watch them fall and laugh at them when they make a mistake. They want to teach them and guide them. These things we also speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Ruach HaKodesh teaches, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. So that's part of that maturity. We can speak spiritual things in a spiritual manner because the Ruach teaches these things. Okay? It's not in man's. We also speak not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Ruach of Elohim teaches. But the natural man does not receive these things of the Spirit of Elohim, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. We can only know these things through the Ruach. And they're things of Yahuwah, the things of Elohim. So he's not going to just give them to fools, give them to wicked men. He's not just going to, he's going to go with those who have gone so far as to turn their lives over to Yah, turn their lives over to his truth and are faithful to him and who love him. Okay. Spiritually discerned. But he who is spiritual judges all things. And we're told to judge in righteous judgment. But he who is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is rightly judged by no one. For who has known the mind of Yahuwah, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Messiah. We have the mind of Messiah. So that's, unless you're just looking at words and seeing little floaty things, if you're looking at the words, if they're registering in what it is telling you, it's that we have the mind of Messiah. In the Ruach, we can know the things of the Ruach. And if we know the things of the Ruach, we know the mind of Yah. We know his mind. And this is a challenge, of course. But we have to live outside of the defeatist mindset of I'm only human. And we're all sinners. And we're all failures waiting to just fall on our faces. That's not what he gives us. His thoughts are expressed in his works. Okay? He knows our thoughts from afar. We've read in the Psalm. Okay? And our thoughts are easily understood compared with his, right? And we refer and we defer to him. How vast is the sum of them? Not that they can be fully measured. And that's what we're going to go into the second part. That was only the first part of that verse. I apologize for moving at a snail's pace here. But I thought it was important to get a sense of how precious and how Yah intended these precious thoughts to be a companion to us, to be a guide to us, to have the Ruach to explain to us and to live them. And then mu, now they are vast, the precious thoughts, okay? And then the final word, I'm sorry, let me get back on that, I didn't click on that. Sorry. In the second line. It says, again, ma atzmu, okay, Rashechem. Now they are vast, and the word Rashechem implies the sum of them, the total of them. And that word comes from Rosh, okay, which means to shake. And the head is the thing that's shaken. We say no, yes, or we move around. Our neck, we're either stiff-necked, we refuse to yield, or we're all over the place. We're being distracted by that which we see, as opposed to the Shema. We hear and pay attention to the things of the Ruach. Okay? So, the word for Rosh implies the head, the chief, also suggests the sum, the completeness. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the head is easily shaken. So the idea of rush is to shake. Rush is the beginning, the start. That's why Bereshit is in the beginning, at the head. Okay, so how vast are the sum of them, the completeness of them, the sum of them, where I am, where I can receive them. So in essence, also as we walk with him, it's the beginning of our becoming more and more like him. That it's a start. How great is the sum of them? How great, how vast are they, the accumulated effect in us. And they are chief, and it is a sum, it is a quantitative as well as a qualitative understanding, because they are precious. Okay,
Right.
so that is verse 17. Herman, did you want to comment on 17?
Just two things. In the past, you have heard me talk about the Kamet Hatuf, where you have a closed, unaccented syllable. But in this case, you have here the metheg, which opens the syllable. So it would be ya keru, because of the metheg that opens the syllable. So it's a ya, an a sound, the comets, as opposed to the o sound. So that's one, and we see the same thing here. Here we have the accent, the Rabia Mugrash, where it is accented, and you also have the method to open the syllable. So it's atsemu, atsemu. So these are not comets hatuf, they're regular comets because the accent is opened by the method. We'll go on to verse 18, Bob. Just quickly, yeah. And you notice the ma, as I said before, the ma and the me, they're both translated how. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little while.
Okay, and going into verse 18. Okay, it's up. Good. Okay. Esperem. Okay. Should I count them? And safar is to score or to mark, to reckon, to recount. Should I count them? Should I score them? Should I mark them? In other words, putting a check next to it. You know how we score things with the railroad ties? We could 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I were to keep score, if I should count them, if I should mark each one individually, like I said, if you were to try to count to 1 billion, you might not live that long to count to 1 billion. We see these numbers and they mean nothing. Just like we see statistics of people who have died or people who are sick or people who are lost, and it's just a number. We don't put a face and a name and a history to them. So should I count mechol, more than sand, chol, let me see. It's round and swirling particles is where that word for sand comes from. That's why some people, myself included, were never really big beach fans because the sand gets in everything. You can't have a nice little nosh there because you're eating a sand sandwich. Okay? Somebody walks by and all of a sudden you get sand in the face and in the eye. Oh, please, slow down, guys. Stop running around. The sand gets everywhere. Okay? So the word for sand actually implies the swirling and the particles of the swirling. So if I should mark all the swirling, and some of us in our vision, we have little floaters in our eyeballs. We have these little things that are floating, and they're harmless. Of course, anything. There might be an extreme version of that, but you have little swirlies in your eyes. If we were to sit and count all the swirly things, Howard Hughes was a billionaire who went crazy, right? He shut himself off and lived in darkness because he saw, when his curtains were open, he saw a stream of light coming in the morning, and he saw all the dust particles floating around. And he says, no. So he shut off all the light, and in the darkness, he doesn't realize that those particles are still floating around. So there you go. So if I were to count all those little particles, okay, yir bun, they would number. They would come to a fullness. Okay, if I were to number them all, they would number. Let's see. They would number more than the sand. Okay, more than sand, because mechol is more than or beyond the comprehension. They would number he kitso ot. I am awake. I am awake. And the root of that word is kutz, which I am awake, to clip off, to be abruptly startled from sleep. So it's not just a calm awakening. We're trying to count them. And we don't realize that we've been sleeping for a long period of time. We startle. Well, I was counting. I was counting something. What was I counting? I was counting the sum, the vast sum of his thoughts. Okay, I would awake. I would be startled awake. Okay, ve'od, and still, and yet I, imach, and still I am with you. And the way I always visualize this thing is, here we are, sort of, like a board game. You start here, and you have a long way to travail around the board before you get to the conclusion, right? And so we're slowly going our way. We've got all the archaeological tools. We're going through. Wow, I'm exhausted. This is wow. I didn't know it's going to be such hard work. We go through, and we kind of eventually kind of doze off, and then we wake up real quick. You know how we deny that we're sleeping? Regina's always telling me that. She says, Bob. I go, I'm not sleeping. I'm okay. I'm awake. I was just closing my eyes. To be startled awake, and then you look to where you are and the progress that you've made, and you're still at the beginning. You're still only at the start. But we've seen an improvement. We've made a companion of his thoughts and his thinking and his desire in our lives to live as he lives. We're made in his image and likeness. Why wouldn't we feel that it's the most profitable way to take that, saying, okay, what do I need to do to continue in this creation, to walk as he walks? And the way to walk, the halakha. It's important for us to get that and to see that there's glory that awaits us. We share the glory, in a manner of speaking, when we have his ruach in us. How do we know the things that we know with math and sports statistics and movies or whatever? But the ruach of man that gives us the ability to do that. But who knows the things of Elohim but the ruach Elohim? And he's giving us the Elohim, of the ruach Elohim, so that we might know the things of Elohim. Do you realize what you've been given? So many people just trivialize the gospel as being, John 3:16. Isn't that nice? It's a cute little thing and it's beautiful and all, but to whom much is given, much is required. If he put in us his ruach, he kind of expects work. If he's the boss, if he's the father, the father expects his kids to walk in his footsteps, to learn his trade, to accumulate the teachings. Who am I? Am I talking to the wall here? Am I talking to the wall? I said that this is the best way to do things, and you continue to do things that way, and you're failing. So again, we want to make him pleased with us. We want to give him nachas and joy in our lives for living life to the fullest and coming to a deeper understanding. Okay, I just have one little comment here with regards to this, if you don't mind. I'll go into this quick. Okay, so when I wake up, so we're exhausted by the attempt. Let me just see. I wrote educated guesses. We made little progress. Is still only at the beginning. Okay, I'm going to read from Psalm 63:6. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. Okay, when I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. Psalm 119, 148. My eyes are awake through the night watches that I may meditate on your word. As we wake and regain consciousness, we're overwhelmed by the acknowledgement of the presence of Elohim. Okay? Psalm 139, verse 19 to 24 says, His holiness, His kadosh, standing, His separateness, His set-apartness, His uniqueness, which destroys evil and searches believers' hearts, testing them, refining them. Okay, and our zeal, verse 1922, our zeal in defending the honor of Yah, His enemies are our enemies. And that's what we're going to see in the next portion of the psalm. So He's given us of Himself. And so we, bearing that truth, bearing what He shared with us, what insults come upon Him come upon us. We are connected. We are eternally connected with Him. He is the communicator and the initiator of truth. And he says, here it is. This day choose life. This day choose understanding. So I'm gonna stop here because I can go on a little bit longer. And I want to make sure that I'm not too overly stimulated by this to put a stop. So that's what I see in these verses. And Herman, what would you like to say?
Okay, well, the stanza seem to have a progression. When we began the stanza, we see the blueprint in the Lord's mind regarding a person that will eventually be called David. So notice the progression here just within the stanza. So the Lord has the blueprint regarding this being that will be called David. And that divine thought then becomes a reality inside the womb. So He forms him. Then the Lord forms days for that person so that he can live outside of the womb. So you have the mind of the Lord, you have the being in the womb, and you have the days so that the person can live outside of the womb and live his life. Now, the last 2 points are a little debatable. Not all commentators agree, but I do see here the resurrection in the last sections here, where He is then created or recreated in the lower parts of the earth, and then awakening in the resurrection to see the light of life. So what I see here is a progression within just this stanza alone, from eternity to eternity, beginning in the Lord's mind, and then the poet rising, awaking in the resurrection to participate in eternity. So that's what I see here in this stanza. Now, Bob, you mentioned a good point regarding the thoughts, because you're right. It's there are thoughts of quality as well as quantity. Those thoughts they play out on two levels: the degree of the thought, which is the quality, and the number. And the degree, of course, is that it's precious, it's valuable, as you stated, Bob. And the number beyond human calculation. So we're talking quality and quantity here. And of course, David comes up with this bright idea. Hey, I'm going to count these. I'm going to count those thoughts. I'm going to try to. But he knows that it's futile. Have you ever tried to count your blessings? Try that one day, folks. Try counting your blessings. And you'll see that you're going to spend a lot of time. You may not have time to do anything else.
True that. True that.
Yes. So regarding the thoughts, regarding the Lord's thoughts to us, we have to realize that His thoughts to us is part of His generosity. We often think about the Lord's generosity in terms of He gives me a home, He gives me food, He allows me to have a car, and so on. But part of the generosity of the Lord is His thoughts towards us. So please think about that. And becoming a parent has really opened my mind to this concept, because when I became a parent, I had to do a lot of thinking about how to care for this child. What am I going to do? How am I going to provide for him? Think that through. How am I going to teach this child and guide this child through life so that this person that the Lord has put in under my authority for a moment, how that person can be a good citizen and also prepare them for eternal life. So being a parent, becoming a parent has opened my eyes to this concept of thinking through for this child. So it has really allowed me to understand the Lord's thoughts to us. Now, regarding the sand, we know that in the Bible, the poets and the Bible authors often use sand as a hyperbole. I'm just going to give two examples. We have in the book of Genesis, Joseph gathering the grain like sand, it says, right? Preparing for the famine. And in Psalm 78, it says that the Lord provided quail for them, like the sand of the sea, right? The sand of the seashore. So the poets often use hyperbole to describe something. And I like to read, let me just go back here. I'd like to show you something. I have a book here. It's entitled Figures of Speech Used in the Bible by E.W. Bullinger. This is a fantastic book, folks. I really recommend that you make this part of your library. I'm going to read a little entry regarding hyperbole because, as I said, the biblical authors often use sand in a hyperbolic example. And so let me just read this little entry and see how Bullinger describes hyperbole. First, he describes the actual word, hooper, which means over or above or beyond, and then bole, which is a casting. So when you put that compound Greek word together, you get a casting or a going beyond, overshooting, excess. And then he says, the figure is so called because the expression adds to the sense so much that it exaggerates it. Or when more is said than is meant to be literally understood in order to heighten the sense. So this is Bullinger's understanding on hyperbole. And the reason why I bring that up is because in our verse, it says that the Lord's thoughts are more than the sand. In this case, I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that in this case, I think the Lord's thoughts for us and for humanity outnumber the grains of sand. Now, of course, there's a lot of sand on this planet, and it's a large number, but I don't think that it can outnumber the Lord's thoughts for both the poet and for all of humanity. Because remember, we're talking thoughts in eternity past, and I know this is an oxymoron. There's no such thing as eternity past, but to try to explain it in human terms, remember that from the Lord's perspective, there are thoughts in eternity past, thoughts in time, and thoughts for eternity future. And I think that in this case, those thoughts do outnumber the sand of the sea. Bob, you mentioned the friends, the companions and the friends. There are some translations, believe it or not, that do translate it as friends. But in my opinion, I don't think it fits the context. And I like the way you explained it on how his thoughts become our friends, our companion. That was very nice. That was very nice. We see throughout the stanza that David speaks of the Lord's thoughts in reference to creation, and those thoughts are manifested in this being. So I don't see how friends, literal friends or companions or neighbors, fits the verse. However, it is possible that the consonantal reader, the ancient consonantal reader, may have understood friends, could have seen friends as a hint, okay, a secondary meaning, because re'echa does mean friends or companion. Like for instance, when we say you shall love your neighbor as yourself, right? Ve'ahavta lere'echa kamocha. So the word does mean friends or companion. So it is possible that the consonantal reader, the ancient Hebrew reader, when he's seeing that, he could have seen it as a hint, as a secondary meaning, and hence contrasting the Lord's friends with the Lord's enemies in the next stanza. That is a possibility.
Yeah.
But I do lean towards thoughts.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely thoughts.
Yes.
But the thoughts become acquainted with us. We become acquainted with the things of Yah, where he is not a stranger and some harsh taskmaster. He's our Abba. So there is a love connection there.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing that you were mentioning with regards to the sand, remember, don't forget the seed of Avram would be like the sand, would be numerable. And it's almost like now we, as the descendants of the friend of Elohim, are companions of in an innumerable number to aspire to his thoughts.
Yes, like I said, Bob, the biblical writers use sand in many, many ways. And I just chose one, the grain that Joseph collected, and also the quail that the Lord provided in the wilderness. There it's hyperbole, of course. But again, I don't think it's hyperbole here. I think the Lord outnumbers big time.
Yeah.
Let me go to the grammar and the poetry here. We're kind of running out of time. Let's see. Okay. So there's verse 18. What I would like to talk about is a subtle parallelism that we see in verses 16 through 18. And it's that that parallelism is in the structure of an AB, AB, and then the X. I also want to talk about, as I said, ma and me, because the English translates it how. How. So what is the difference? Why the difference in these two terms? And then I want to talk about the posal forms. And this is something that I spoke about last week, the posal forms. Remember on the eretz and aretz? So that's what I want to touch on regarding the poetry and the grammar. So here is the little structure. Of course, it is, oh boy, what's the term that I want to find? I'm losing my thoughts here. But nonetheless, I see a little structure here in verses 16 through 18. Rough. It's kind of a rough, that's the word. It's a rough structure, but nonetheless, I do see it here. Where we see in verse 16 where it says, your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. And what that describes is the formation of David. But then the poet continues and says that the days were fashioned for him. So we see here the formation of the days for David. So here's the A and the A, the formation of David in the womb and the formation of the days for David. But then we have the B and the B, which are the thoughts. And as I said, first, they have to be in the mind before they can be written down in a book. So we have the thoughts leading to that formation. And here we have the thoughts, again, leading to the formation. How precious are your thoughts to me, O Lord, right? So we have the formation of David, A, the formation of the days for David, A complement, A prime, the thoughts leading to the formation and the thoughts leading to the formation. And then X, the reality of being united to his creator, the joyful reality, I should say. For me, I can speak for myself. Bob, I think for you as well, being united with him. Because when he says, when I wake up from that daze of thinking and thinking, I am still with you. So I see a rough parallelism here in this section within the stanza of verses 16 through 18.
Amen.
Now, verse 17 regarding the ma and the meh. Here we see that the ma is pointed with the, by the way, anyway, first of all, these words are usually translated as interrogatives, as what or as how. That's how these words are usually translated. But in this case, there are exclamations. How precious, how great. So notice that one, the ma, and sometimes you can also have a ma with a comets. Here it's with the pathak. So notice the pathak the makef, and the dagish. This is how you have the dagish in the yud. You see the yud there. There is a dagish. But with the meh, you'll notice that it's only pointed with a segol. So the question that I ask, why the difference? If they're both translated, how? I'll give you a moment to think about it. So the difference is grammatical, of course. Although they both mean the same thing, the difference has to do with grammar. If you will notice that the following word that comes after ma is yakeru, and the yud is not a guttural. It's not a guttural. So in this case, it takes the form of ma with the makef. But the meh with the segol comes to play when you have a word that begins with the ayin guttural and a kametz. So this is why there is a difference in the grammar between the ma and the meh. Here, atsemu, you have the ayin guttural with the kametz. And to give you an example, here I chose an example here from Genesis chapter 3 and Genesis chapter 4, and they're very, very famous verse. So I chose these because not only are they famous, but they have the same grammatical phenomenon. So when the Lord is speaking to Eve, he says to her, "What is this you have done? Ma zot asit." What is this you have done? And notice the mad with the pathak, the makef, and the doubling dagish in the zayin. But when the Lord speaks to Cain and he says, "What have you done, Cain?" Notice here, notice the meh, because asita, the second person masculine pronominal suffix, asita begins with an ayin guttural and it has the pathak, so hence it's meh, just like in verse 17. Okay. So that's the difference between ma and meh. And now, regarding the pausal forms, you remember that last week we had rukamti be tachtiyot aretz, and skillfully wrought in the Lord parts of the earth. And I stated that the eretz, of course, being a segalic noun, is accented on the first syllable, but when it is in pause with the siluk, due to the siluk, this mark here, this vertical bar, the eretz is heightened to aretz. And the example I gave was in Exodus 21, the lex talionis, which is the law of retribution. And remember, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand. And notice, regel, tachet, ragel. Because again, the siluk, the segolate noun, is heightened. And this is what we see here. In our verse, we're going to notice here a peculiarity with imach. So this is the last verse of a stanza. And notice, when I first started studying this, Bob, I said to myself, wait a minute, something is not right here. Why is it imach? Because this is feminine. This is feminine. So I had to dig. So, of course, the verse is saying, if I should count them, right, there will be more than the sand of the sea. And when I awake, I am still with you. But I said, wait a minute, but this is feminine. How could it be feminine if the poet is referring to the Lord? So here's the deal here. The form that we have here is imach, right, which is the feminine form, as I had just said. Normally, it would be imecha. You have the doubling dagish here. So it would be im, two m's, because it doubles the mem, imecha. It should be that. But the reason why it's not imecha in the masculine form, it is because it is in pause. This is in pause. And when it is in pause, this is the pausal form for the masculine singular. Okay, this is the pausal form. The feminine takes the same form. Okay, so this is the pausal form for the second person masculine singular pronominal suffix, the cha, which is normally cha, you. So happens that this form is identical for the feminine, but context is king, folks. Context. The context will determine which gender it is. And we know that since the poet is referring to the Lord, it is masculine. We don't see it in English because you is you, but in the Hebrew, we do see the gender. It has a feminine form, but it is masculine because it is in pause. Okay, and that's the end of that. Let me go back to our verse and verse 18. Here it is here. Here it is here, the last verse, in with the siluk that causes it to be in pause. Alrighty, and with that, Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Amen. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Absolutely good stuff. And as we're taking these verses apart, we see there's a reason why these things say what they say and what they mean, and how we can take them a step beyond the literal into the metaphorical, into the into the deeper understanding of things. So this is really really good. I get a lot out of our times together here, and I pray that you are too. I know William is out there. Amen. Amen. So again, I pray for those who would join us and who, in this country, we have a lot of people who are planning for tomorrow a big meal. And, my opinion is that every day is the giving of thanks. This is, an invention, and have his people on historical sides claiming one thing against another thing. But I pray that if you're watching this at another time, that's perfectly good, because I see that a lot of people are getting whatever they're coming later, maybe, hopefully. But please check out these teachings. Check them out, because there's a lot. This is a big meal. This is a big meal each week that we try to serve up. It's not a once a year type of thing in which we are told culturally this is what we need to be doing, or what we need to be eating, or not eating, or how much money we should be spending on these meals. One day a year we are to eat to extremes or whatever. But let us dine on the word. That is
Amen.
The nutrition that we have offered, and that we spend our time enjoying and reveling in, as we would a delicious meal. And when you have a nice meal, you say blessings before, you say blessings afterwards, and you're grateful to Yah for providing you the invitation to partake of the meal at the king's table. We come to the king's table, which is synonymous not just for coming for meals, but being part of the household, being part of the house, being companions to the thoughts of Yah. As I said, reading from the words of Shaul in 1 Corinthians, we see that the Ruach gives us an inside track on the thoughts of Yah. So they're not just bouncing against us and we're just kind of, well, I don't know what that means. No, we put on the mind of Messiah, and we're able to decipher these things and to live based upon the discoveries, and to have an enriched life. And again, we try to give you a little bit of shortcut by doing some of the work for you. But please feel that you're part of this process, that you have to be part of this, and let us know what your thoughts are and what your feelings are. Looks like we had a little bit of a low attendance today, but we do pray that in spite of this celebration on the tomorrow, like a lot of people I think are getting a early to bed and early to rise type of a thing. But check this out. Check out the teachings and see the conclusion that David makes in these two verses based upon the previous verses. That we're formed infinitely. We have a skeletal structure. We are viscerally. Our organs are all in the right place. Even our heart is in the right place, which is important. And we're prepared for the day. Days are prepared for us. And then we enter into the mindset of Messiah, the thoughts of Messiah. Then only on the outside can we consider the things that are on the inside. that they make sense to us. We can't go back in, even as Nicodemus says, can one person go back into the womb and be born again? No, obviously we're talking about being born from above, and we are awakened to the presence of Yah, who is always with us in the resurrection of each morning, and in the resurrection when Messiah returns for us. We have an awakening, and Yah wants us to be fully competent in the way that we are perceiving his direction. So we thank you again for joining us. Oh, it's already 8:40. Sorry about that. So we thank you. Any final words, Herman?
Come back, folks. As always, that's my
Right.
My phrase there. Come back, because now there's going to be a shift in the poem, and I hope to touch on the concept of imprecations. So that's a nice fancy word for you. And so come back,
Yes,
and come and learn about the twist in the poem and the
Yes.
imprecations.
Amen.
Yeah, a little teaser there.
Indeed. Very teasy. Okay. Shalom, shalom. And we're going to close in prayer. Herman, would you do us the honors?
Wow. Okay. Alrighty. Father, thank you, Lord. We thank you and thank you and thank you. Thank you for thinking of us and providing for us. Thank you for loving us and caring for us. Continue to prepare us for your kingdom and prepare us also for these studies, Lord. May they go far and wide. Bless each and every one of us, our families, and allow us to delight in you, in your presence, Father. We love you and we need you. In Yeshua's gracious and beautiful name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So in
Amen.
conclusion, we say Laila Tov Ulahitraot, which means good evening, and we're going to check you out later. But also, like I said, a lot of people are celebrating tomorrow. Whether it's good or bad, it's not for me to say. It is, but we do give thanks, and it's not a once a day thing, and it's not a day in which we call it by the food that we eat. It is being grateful to Yah every day, every day. Just like Shabbat is an essential part of our makeup in the Ruach. So we need to walk as he walked. So we're grateful. And we thank you so much. And please tell people about this if you found this interesting at the very least. So we're very grateful to you once again this evening. And we say, Shalom, shalom, and Laila Tov, Ulahitraot. Check you later.
Shalom.
Amen.
At night.
Good night.
Good night.